Welcome to the Roar of the Lions UK podcast, episode number 65, Future Perfect. Thank you for joining us. If you are live on YouTube or Twitch, or if you're listening to us on the audio, we appreciate you guys so much. Our subs have grown now from 40 2 weeks ago to 160 odd on YouTube. So we are growing rapidly and we appreciate each and every one of you. I'm joined by my co-host, as always, Anthony Fitzpatrick, Ryan McCluskey. How you doing, boys?
Doing well, thanks, Matt. Doing good.
Good. Right, just to let you guys know, if you haven't seen the videos that we've been doing in the last couple of weeks, we've had some absolutely stonking stuff. So, the Saturday, not the one just gone, but the one before that, we profiled Jamar Jefferson and Derek Barnes, going through some of their tape in 2020 to have a look at how they might do with the Lions. Saturday just gone, we talked Amon-Ra and Ife Melifonwu, and then we cheekily dropped on Monday morning an interview with Dave Perkett of the Detroit Free Press. That's a cracking interview. And I'm amazed to say, boys, it's got over 500 views in this first few days. So, I mean, people love Dave, but we must be doing something right, eh? I can't believe it.
I know, it's weird. We've been going nearly a year now, and those first few weeks when we were picking up 5 or 6 plays on Spotify or whatnot, and now each of our YouTube videos is like getting up into 3 figures. It's amazing. And again, thanks to everyone who listens to us. We're incredibly grateful. It makes doing this a lot more worthwhile, knowing that people are taking in what we're doing. So, appreciate it.
Just to start off, actually, with a little story before we dive into the news, and then having a look at the 2022 NFL draft potential for the Lions, but just something that happened at work that I just want to share. The guys at work are kind of aware that I do this sort of thing. I chat about it pretty much constantly because it's all I ever do outside of work now. It's like a part-time job, properly is. And my boss, or one of my bosses, who's about 50, late 50s, 57, 58, he came in to us. I'm an accountant, if you guys don't know that. And came in and he said, got an interesting VAT question for you guys. Have you heard of this OnlyFans? And I was like, I've heard of OnlyFans, yes. And he's like, there's been an interesting question to do with VAT. And do the people that are on there have to pay it? And I was like, that's a really good question. Consider that for a while. And then he said, do you think that'd be good for your podcast? And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, isn't it a thing where fans get together to like talk about sports? And I think he thinks it's like the Spotify Green Room app or something like that. And I had to explain to my boss exactly what OnlyFans was, and the look on his face was an absolute picture. But just since he mentioned the podcast, I thought I'd get it in early doors. But I have to tell you, I was cracking up for a full half an hour off the back of that. Anyway, right, let's dive into some news before we talk about those 2022 potential draftees. And first up, the Athletic have gone back and they've watched Penei Sewell's college tape, as we're going to do actually in a couple of weekends' time. And Chris Burke says, and I quote, he has the skill set to be a stud right away, like as early as the week 1 test against Nick Bosa, Dee Ford, and the 49ers defense. What do you think on that, boys? We think that Sewell's an absolute monster, but do you really think that he can ball out in week 1 against that caliber of edge rusher? That seems like a tall order to me.
No, swapping sides for the first time in years, it's going to be growing pains. If he turns up the first day and shuts down one of the Bosa brothers or someone like Eric Armstead, then I'll get a tattoo of his mural. If he gives an all-pro performance in the first game, I'll be amazed.
We're witnesses to that.
Yeah, this is recorded. There's no getting away from that now.
Yeah, we can't edit this out like we used to in the old days now.
If we win the Super Bowl, I'll get the whole O-line. I'll get all their names tattooed on my leg.
Halapulavati Vaitai is a long name to get on your leg.
That'll just be Big V.
Big V.
What
do you think, Ant, on Sewell? Do you think he can really do it?
I don't know. I feel like no matter how well he does this year, he's not going to meet expectations just because the expectations are that high. He could have a Pro Bowl year and people would just say, oh, well, we expected that of him. So I don't know. I don't like lumping all this pressure on him. Just let him go there. Let him develop in peace. Don't go putting all this pressure on him. You know that he can deal with the best right away, etc. Just let him settle in. Let him get acquainted, and I'm sure soon enough, towards the end of the year, we'll see what we invested in.
I think the thing for me about Bosa is that even in his one rookie season where he was fit for the majority of it, he made seasoned vets look bad. Like, he made guys who played the position a long time and, top 5, top 10 in their position look really bad. So, I think he broke the rookie pressure record in his rookie season, and
I feel like tackle's a harder position to adjust to, though. A rookie tackle coming in against a rookie pass rusher, especially that pass rushing scheme he's in with the 49ers. It's not like he's not got talent around him. He's got a lot of talent there.
Yeah.
And I think people underestimated that a little bit to start with. Like I said, they've got a treasure trove of guys who can rush the quarterback there. Not doing any disservice to him, but it's a lot easier when you've got those guys around you. As a tackle, you got your guard next to you, and that's it.
And when the guard is Big V or Crosby.
Yeah. The uncertainty of who's going to be at right tackle also raises questions because he wants someone that he can rely on and trust next to him. So he's going to have to establish relationships. So depending on who's at that player could very well depend on how quickly he develops.
All right, let's move it on. And ESPN have been doing their player rankings, and I'll start with the promising one, Frank Ragnow. We know him as the absolute mauler who can play with a broken, what was it, neck? No, throat. That's the one.
Fractured throat.
And he's an absolute beast. Well, ESPN execs and coaches and scouts have rated him the top center in the league and the fourth best interior offensive lineman. He was PFF's second highest rated center in the league last year. And, I mean, for me, it's an accolade which I don't normally see people giving Lions players. So this is welcome for me, and I think richly deserved. But do you think it's justified, or do you think it's a little bit too high?
He's a great center, don't get me wrong, but for me, he's second or third. He's behind Corey Linsley, I believe. He had the best year by a long shot. And then you've got what's his face who played for the Raiders? Was it the Raiders? I can't remember.
Hudson, is it?
Hudson. The Raiders sacked him off, didn't they? I think it's a battle between Ragnow and Hudson for second for me. I think Linsley's just had a little bit of a better year last year, but I think in 12 months' stacks, obviously, Ragnow's a lot younger. He's going to get a lot better. So he'll soon be the best center in the league, but maybe not just yet.
All right. Ford Field at full capacity for 2021. No masks, no vaccination proof necessary. If you don't have vaccines, you're encouraged to wear a mask, but that won't be insisted upon, and it will operate completely cashlessly for the first time. It's great news, boys. I mean, I think it's a sign that, the fight against COVID is slowly being won. If not, it's kind of bouncing around a little bit here and there, but it's going to be great news that we're going to have fans back, whichever way you fall on that side of the argument, isn't it?
I think they're going to need it. Home advantage is a big thing, especially with the Lions. The fans are so passionate, they're so loud. They're going to need that sort of support going into this year, especially it's going to be quite difficult. So, having the fans there just might be able to raise them that notch needed just to, a few close games, turn them into wins, possibly been optimistic, but we'll see. But it's good that it'll be full capacity.
Yeah, I agree. If they're playing in front of empty stadiums, I won't give the Lions a hope in hell because there'd be literally very little motivation. They need that at Ford Field. Home field advantage is massive, so even any sort of crowd is just something to give them a bit of a boost. If they're behind the chains or something, or if it's not going well, they're going to need a little bit of a pick me up, and just a full stadium, like I say, will give them that.
Yeah. Right, a few more bits. So the Lions now, as of, I think it was yesterday, might have been today, now have unofficially the single season sack leader of all time. So Pro Football Reference have gone back to 1960 and they've had a good look at all the tape to look at who got all the individual sacks. And our own Al Bubba Baker clocked 23 sacks in his rookie year in 1978, which beats the existing official record from Michael Strahan's 22.5 sacks in 2001. He then went on the Around the NFL podcast where he revealed that he was moved to tears having not thought about for quite a long time because it felt like his career was getting properly recognised once again. I think he had one All-Pro nod, a couple of Pro Bowl nods. I think he was the Rookie Defensive Player of the Year in 1978 as well, if my memory serves. I didn't actually write that down, but he seems like a super nice guy. And, you know, everyone knows that the Strahan mark was thrown to him by Brett Favre. It feels like we've taken something back which actually means something, lads.
Bit before my time, that one, unfortunately.
It's nice. It's nice to see them going back. Unfortunately, with the 17th game, that record might not actually last very long. The more games we'll get, I think possibly if we're going to be adding more games in the future, within a few years, that record could very well be broken. But like I say, it's nice to see someone get recognition that must have come as a total shock to him.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. I wonder how long it's been since someone eclipsed 20 sacks, because 22 and a half seems like a monstrous number. I think there's a reason why that stood for 20 years. Don't you? Can you think of someone who's got even close to 22 and a half?
What's Donald's record? Is it 19 and a half? I think Donald got 19 and a half one year, didn't he?
Let's have a look. I fancy having this.
So I was having a look. Yeah, I was having a look this week, and I think there's eight players that should get to the 100 sack yards this year, and there's some great names on there. And one of them, the Justin Houston, he's still a free agent. He's got 97 and a half, and he's still not been signed yet, which I find absolutely mind-boggling.
Oh man, Aaron Donald's sack numbers are just unbelievable from the interior. Rookie year onwards, 2014 onwards, 9, 11, 8, 11, 20 and a half, 12 and a half, 13 and a half. Jesus Christ. Monstrous. We knew that anyway, though. Right. 2 more to go. So Chris Burke on Twitter very, very recently has just got a quote out of Michael Brockers saying, working with Dan Campbell is awesome because he reminds me a lot of Sean McVay and how he came in. As far as he understands, there's no ego when it comes to his coaching style. It's all about the team. 2 things I want to take from this. Dan Campbell and Sean McVay are getting compared. What the fuck? And also, Sean McVay has no ego. I do not believe it. For 1 second. But what do you think, boys? Brockers thinks that McVay and Campbell is a comparison, at least in enjoyment and lack of ego.
Rubbish. Sean McVay's got an ego. We saw it in Hard Knocks. He swaggers around with his 19-year-old girlfriend and lapdog like he's a playboy. He's like Jared Goff, like say he thinks he's Hugh Hefner. He thinks incredibly big of himself to say he's about 5'2". I'm not buying that crap at all.
Yeah, I feel like Brockers has just been diplomatic here, given the diplomatic answers rather than the controversial ones.
Fair. Right. Last thing, I haven't written it down, but from memory, and everyone's talking about it, we have to spend a little time talking about Stafford. As I said, the ESPN analysts, as well as the coaches and scouts, have been rating their quarterbacks. Stafford winds up moving from 10 last year to 6 this year, and apparently Jared Goff is rumoured to be in the bottom of the 20s, something around 25, 26 area. I love Stafford. I have a Stafford jersey. I'm a Stafford believer. I always thought he was better than the national media gave him credit for. I do not believe he's better than Lamar Jackson. I do believe he deserves to be in that conversation, though. It sounds high, but it's only because he's been rated so low through his career, from my opinion, because of where he's been playing. And that's just kind of hampered him. But on the flip side of that, I don't believe that Goff deserves to be that low. I don't think he deserves to be high. I would have said that somewhere in that middle tier of maybe late teens sounds about right. It sounds really low to be putting him alongside anyone that New Orleans can throw at you, for goodness sake. What do you reckon? Is Stafford overrated now? Is that about where he should be? What do you think?
He's immensely overrated. Like, 6th best quarterback in the league is... I love Stafford. He's my favourite players of all time, but that's rubbish. Like, all the media's doing now is kissing his ass. And do you know what? I'm sick to death of it already. All they did was bash on him when he was in Detroit, and now it's going the other way. Like, I'm expecting him to bloody think he's on Easter. He's going to roll out of a cave like Jesus. Like, he's not the second coming. He might take the Rams to a Super Bowl, but that's only because he's now joining a franchise that's equipped to get there. Like, he is not some messiah. Like, he's fantastic, but I could name all the quarterbacks now that are better than him, and it would bump him down a few places.
What do you reckon?
Well, in terms of Lamar, Lamar's got nothing on him when it comes to passing, but likewise, Stafford has nothing on him when it comes to his running ability. But I think right now, Lamar's not proved anything more than what Stafford has. I don't think he's got better ability than him, but I think maybe overall he is a little bit high there. And it is amazing to see the differentiation in opinion just because he's left Detroit. But I mean, I don't know. I'm done with it. I love him to bits, but Goff's here now. The new era's here. I want to stop talking about him. With the greatest of due respect to him. I hope he does well with the Rams, whilst the Rams do poorly. And that's about it now.
Who were the five in front of him? Who were the five quarterbacks in front of him?
From memory, it's Mahomes, Wilson. Oh God, why am I blanking on loads of players?
Well, if we think about it, so you've got Brady, Mahomes,
Yeah.
Wilson, Kyler Murray. You've got Josh Allen.
Josh Allen was 5.
Yep. So, like, say if you've got Lamar, so that already bumps Stafford down to 7. Like, so who else would we put?
I don't think Kyler Murray's above Stafford.
Well, I do.
Okay, if you want.
He's an elite dual threat quarterback. Like, I think he's the modern quarterback. I think Stafford was elite 5 years ago, but the league's changed now.
I think Kyler Murray is one bad year away from losing his job.
Really?
No.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't
manage that badly. Like, because Cliff Kingsbury's an idiot.
Close. Not even close.
I think that he has been good without living up to the hype. Unfortunately, he had the Hail Murray, which was obviously excellent, but his height legitimately causes him a problem throwing in the pocket. It does. I know that there's not meant to be an issue, and people didn't think that maybe it's going to be an issue, but they took him number 1 anyway. And throwing out of the pocket, he's absolutely unbelievable in his shiftiness. The number of times he's put defenders on their asses because he can just shimmy around them is amazing, but
he was injured last year. He took a shot to his shoulder that he had to stop running because he couldn't injure his shoulder. That injury took away that dual threat ability, but he still did pretty well without it. But he's not even close to losing his job there. He's one of the best quarterbacks going, and he'll be one of the best in a couple of years. I said by the time he reaches his contract, by the time he gets his pro deal, he'll be better than Russell Wilson, hands down.
The one we didn't mention, of course, is Aaron Rodgers, but who knows if he's playing in the NFL this year? No one knows. So,
put an asterisk next to him. If I'm being like honest, I would put Stafford at 8. I'd say Stafford's the 8th best quarterback in the league, which I think still like a few places an upgrade from when we were holding him back.
I think the thing for me is if you think about the Dalton scale was always about whether the quarterback makes the players around him better or whether he rises and falls with the team. The one thing I can definitely say about Stafford is that he elevated everyone that played with him to a greater extent than, say, Lamar Jackson has. Lamar Jackson does not elevate the players around him. The only player that he elevates is potentially the running back because of the zone read ability and the RPOs and what have you. But I don't think that Hollywood Brown is a better player because Lamar Jackson is throwing in the ball. I just don't. So I might give Stafford it over Lamar just because I think that he can do it a bit more with his arm. But Josh Allen clearly showed that he was far better.
Oh, he's a complete
far better.
He's going to be fantastic.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, enough on Stafford. Let's hope that Goff can outplay that prediction of 26 because I think that's a slap in the face considering his problems with his hand. But anyway, I digress. We'll talk about that another time. We are here to talk about the 2022 NFL draft. It may seem early, but we're here to give you the info for the 2021 season. And not just the NFL, but college too. Most of us will get into college, February time, Super Bowl's finished, who we pick in April. Well, I say to you, why wait? Your Saturdays can be full as well as your Sundays. We're going to give you some players to look at that we might actually take in next year's draft. And I'm going to paint you a picture. I know that a load of us think that the Lions are going to outplay their prediction this year. Vegas think 5.5 wins. We're hoping maybe for 7 or 8. I don't know. But let's say it's even worse. The Lions are absolutely trash. Goff has just fallen off a cliff. He's gone down in 2019. He's gone down in 2020. And the Lions are picking number 1 overall. We're in the market for a quarterback, right? You know, we can't continue with Goff in that scenario. Well, let's take a look at some quarterbacks that we might legitimately take in that scenario. We can keep an eye on them through this college season and go into it knowing, you know, a bit more about what we might do right off the bat. So we put together a list of quarterbacks that we're going to look at. Did any of you have an intro prep for those quarterbacks, or shall I read them out? Okay, Ant, take it away, man.
Well, yeah, so like I say, we've got 5 quarterbacks sort of on the periphery, you know, who might be going in the first round, etc., interesting us there. And I believe, have people picked out wild cards as well?
I haven't, but I think Ryan has.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. So yeah, as I say, quarterback could be a legitimate concern for us in next year's draft, and we have to take a look at who's possibly going to be there at the front of the first round. So we've got 5 guys. We're going to go through them now, a few wild cards as well. So the first guy we're going to settle on. Now, PFF have this guy as the only elite tier quarterback currently on this, you know, out of this group of quarterbacks coming through. And it's a name you're going to be hearing linked with the Lions very often this season. And that name is Spencer Rattler. Now, Spencer Rattler is quarterback for the Oklahoma Sooners. And to tell you a little bit about them and his prospects this year, their head coach is Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley has been there. This is his 5th year now. In his first year, they developed Baker Mayfield. Second year, Kyler Murray. Third year, Jalen Hurts. And last year was Spencer Rattler's first year there. And he is predicted possibly to go at number 1 in the draft this year, depending on how he does. So Lincoln Riley, if you're looking for a guy who's going to develop here, you could possibly have 3 Heisman winners and number 1 draft picks in 5 years. But just to go through a little bit about Spencer Rattler, his stats in college so far, he's been with the Sooners for 2 years. He spent the first year sitting behind Jalen Hurts. As I say, last year was his first full year. He's played 14 games. He's got 221 of 328 on completions, which is a 67.4% accuracy rating. 3,112 receiving yards at about 9.5 yards per average throw, 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and a passer rating of 172, which is pretty good in fairness. It's 2020. That was his, as I say, his first year as a starter. So all told for his 2020, it was 11 games, 214 of 317 completions at 67.5% accuracy. 3,031 yards, 28 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, passer rating of 172.6. He had 81 rush attempts for 160 yards and 6 rushing touchdowns. So also a little bit of a threat in the running game. Now, just to sort of have a look at how he might develop this year, I'll quickly run you through Oklahoma's schedule, just so you can see the level of opposition they're up against. They're up against Tulane, WCU, Nebraska, West Virginia, Kansas State, Texas Longhorns, TCU, Kansas, Texas Tech, Baylor, Iowa State, and Oklahoma State. Now, according to ESPN, that is the 51st strongest strength of schedule, so it's not the most difficult schedule out there, and it's the easiest of all the teams in the Big 12. So, you know, maybe looking forward, it's not the biggest one there, but everyone's really high on this guy. He's really good. But I mean, I'll pass it over to you, Matt. I know you sort of mentioned when we were chatting about him the other day, you've been watching the tape and you weren't quite as impressed with how the media is currently. I don't know is there anything specific that sort of led you to believe that about him?
I think so. I was actually reading some draft profiles after I had a look at some tape just to see if what I'd seen had aligned with what some of the better scouts out there had seen, and some of it did align and some of it didn't. So we'll see. I think there's some projection involved in him possibly going number 1 overall. I watched his tape against Baylor in 2020, How can we say this? He's not an athletic guy particularly. He's not a dual threat. He is elusive enough to maneuver in the pocket so that he can miss sacks. He's got enough explosion in his first step that he can make people miss without having any sort of speed to run away from them. So that's fine. He can scramble. He keeps his eyes downfield when he's scrambling. They run a pro-style offense, so that's great. It helps the projection to the pros. He's got a lovely throw-in stride. Everyone knows about his ability to throw out the pocket. I worry about how quickly he gets through his progressions. I don't think it's as quick as I'd like. He does lots of swing and quick passes. So, maybe that's not quite how it's going to be in the pros, but he does throw plenty of deep balls too. The offense is mainly a spread offense, mainly 11 or 01, it's 4 wide. Go 4 wide on most of their plays, which allows him to have quite easy reads when he's out there. The biggest thing for me is that he telegraphs his passes. What I say about his progressions, he kind of locks onto one receiver, and he takes a while to throw. The defense, especially its pros, will read his eyes and be able to make plays on the ball, if not give away cheap interceptions. He needs to identify his read and make the throw, or move on from the progression rather than hanging on to it. I worry that that's not something that's easily fixed. So, when people say that he's going to be the number 1 overall pick, I can see it. His accuracy generally is good. He can make all the throws he needs to. I don't know, compared to some of the other potential draftees on this list, because of his lack of dual threat ability, I do worry about his ceiling. If he fixes some of these issues, he could be a fantastic quarterback, but it's a big if, and he doesn't have the running upside that some of these others do. So I'm not sold, especially not at number 1 overall. First round, absolutely, and top half of the first round, sure, but number 1 seems a bit rich for me. How about you, Ryan?
No, I agree. My problem with quarterbacks in college is when quarterbacks are used to a spread offense, when they get to the pros and it all gets condensed, where you don't see a pro, you spread that often, you might go down to 2 wide receivers or a tight end. Like, the field narrows, you take away their options, you make them think a little bit more, it won't become as natural. And that makes them have less time in the pocket. Like you say, his ability to escape is limited because he can throw on the run, he can scramble when needed, but to give him a design run to choose whether to keep or hand off the ball and take off on a run is not something I would feel trustworthy giving him as a rookie. Like, I understand he's got a good throw, he can make all the throws in the books. I do worry 7 interceptions. Like you say, the Big 12 is not a great division, it's not a great conference. So you could ask, like you say, that's quite a few interceptions for someone that completes 2/3 of all their throws. He's very accurate, but that is quite a large number for someone that throws so many passes. I do agree that Oklahoma are essentially a quarterback unit. Like, they breed these smaller quarterbacks. Like, say, when you look at all the quarterbacks last few years, they're all shorter, stockier builds. Like, he's a whisperer like Lincoln Riley. He's probably going to be his last year. I expect him to be an NFL head coach next year. So I think he would be very interesting where he goes. As far as number 1 pick, right now, I don't think a quarterback will be number 1 pick. But I think this is someone that's going to go in the top 3 to 4 positions, purely based on being able to make all the throws in the book and accuracy. Like, you can't train accuracy. You can't learn it. You've either got it or you haven't, because it's a timing thing. And he is actually very capable of making those throws on time, hitting someone in stride. So he's got a lot of upside. He's just going to be very raw.
I think you raised a good point, Matt, about his first read and him locking onto it, because you say he had 7 interceptions last year. I watched the game they played against Kansas State and they picked him off 3 times, and it was entirely for that reason. I mean, the first one, it was a pass battered down because the lineman could see where he was throwing and he threw it a little low, swatted it straight out there because he knew exactly where he was going. The second was picked off in double coverage because, again, the cover safety had locked onto where he was going and had shifted over. And the third one, well, it was a little bit of an erratic throw, but again, sort of forced misplacement from a guy who'd fathomed out what he was going to do. So I think that's the big thing he really needs to sort out this year. I mean, there's a lot to like. I mean, his arm strength is probably one of the best of the guys on here, probably the second best out of them all, I reckon. You know, he's very, maneuverability wise in the pocket, he's very good. He doesn't take sacks very often, but I mean, I guess we're talking about the strength of schedule. That will be the thing that will put me off. If we were saying now, are we going to take him number one? Yes, he's going to put up some good stats this year, but they've got a very easy schedule. So that'd make me at least a little bit wary about taking him first to start with. You'd kind of hope to see it against high level opposition before, I guess, drafting that much out of him. I don't know. I'm not entirely. Do you reckon the strength of schedule is a good thing for him or a bad thing?
Bad thing. He's going to play some awful defenses like Kansas, who are one of the worst teams in the country. Texas Tech are in pieces. He's going to get some massively inflated numbers this year.
Well, yeah, looking at the schedule, I mean, you have to go to week 11 of 12 when Brock Purdy and Iowa State visit, to where I think you're first looking at maybe a challenge to him, depending on how Iowa State are doing. But you'd still expect them to win that quite comfortably, wouldn't you?
Yeah, there's no Iowa State are the only threat to them winning the entire Big 12 championship. I think they're going to probably cakewalk it this year, which does worry me. Like you say, the strength of defense he does face does vary. If he throws 1 week for 400 yards, 5 touchdowns, sure, it looks great. But when you look at the level of competition he's playing, that does worry me. And that's what people said about Lance. Like, the strength of competition, the defenses you do play can very much make numbers look better than they are on paper.
Just to say a big what up, Doe, to Big Wes, One Prime 40, Omar Pacheco, and the others who have joined us in the chat, as well as Zero Dark 40. Hey, Steve, how you doing, man? Sorry, Andy, carry on.
No. Carry on. I'd finish my little bit for that.
All right. Shall we move on to Sam Howell?
All right. Yeah. Okay. So next up, I think Sam Howell. Now, Sam Howell's a weird one because I think he was a projected first round. He was the projected first pick at one point before Rattler, but I don't know what's sort of gone on. But I think he's now probably the quarterback 2 going into this year's draft so far. So Sam Howell, he plays for the North Carolina Tar Heels. Again, he's been there 2 years, all told, and they're coached by Mack Brown, who's a highly experienced coach. He's there on his second stint. He actually managed to flip Sam Howell because he was committed to Florida State originally, but he convinced Howell to go and join him there. And I think he made a very good decision because, I mean, their offense last year was absolutely fearsome. They had 4 big guys go in the draft this year: Daz Newsome, De'Ami Brown, Javonte Williams, Michael Carter in the backfield. I mean, that was a hell of an offense they had there last year. And as a coach, he's really good. He got the 4th best draft class this year. They're building a really good team there. So going to be interesting to see what we get from him this year. The offensive coach there, his offensive scheme ranks 1st in yards per game, 2nd in points per game, 2nd in passing yards per game. So you think that's going to play into Sam Howell's hands again this year if he can get his hands on some good receivers. But just to jump through his stats, he's played 25 games all told. 496 out of 770 completions, that's 64.4%, 7,227 passing yards, about 9.4 yards per throw, 68 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, and a passer rating of 168.8. Doesn't really rush as much, 186 attempts for 181 yards and 6 touchdowns. And he's also got 2 receiving touchdowns as well. So they do a few trick plays out there. His 2020 was really good. Only played the 12 games, 237 to 348 completions. That was up to 68% accuracy, 3,586 yards, 10 yards per average on his throws, 30 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and a passer rating just below 180. So I'll just go through their schedule again, show you what sort of opposition he's up against. So this year they play Virginia Tech, Georgia State, Virginia, Georgia Tech, Duke, Florida State, Miami, Notre Dame, Wake Forest, Pittsburgh, Wofford, I have no idea where that is, and North Carolina State. So you're probably going to be looking for his development. You're going to be looking at maybe the middle four there: Florida State, Miami, Notre Dame, Wake Forest. I think that's where we're going to see how he's developing sort of as a player this year. But I'll pass it on. Who's probably the biggest in on Howell here?
I'd say I am. Like, if the Lions are going big and going on and a quarterback, it's got to be Sam Howell. He by far throws the nicest and sweetest deep ball in football. Like, he has got an absolute cannon of an arm. It's ridiculous. Like, I just love him. Like, I have questions like, say, he's got an average build, an average size. Like, he's not the fastest. Pure pocket passer. He's the best, I'd say. He's the best at what he does. Another question, like, say, a problem with, like, the schedule, like, say, playing in the ACC. Wofford are an FCS team, so there's a good chance, like, say, he's going to put up ridiculous numbers here. He has the advantage of Rattler of having 2 fantastic years, like you say. He has done it twice now for 2 years. The big concern is when you look at him is he a product? Is he a system quarterback from a team that is detailed to go deep? You like say Daz Newsome, Diami Brown, 2 absolute burners. They would take the roof off any defense. He could literally just put it up and expect one of them to get it down there. This year, I know for a fact, I've looked at the recruitment, they've not reloaded. He has got a very depleted offense, in my opinion. So I expect his numbers to drop. So we're going to see what he's going to do this year with what he has to work with. And this is where we're probably going to see the best of him when he's got some freshmen, some rookies or some sophomores, those guys that he doesn't really have a connection or trust with. But arm talent gives it for me. It's the questions where his escapability and pocket presence when he's flushed out the pocket and has to take off, that's where he's going to really win us over, I think.
I think I agree with you. Out of watching tape on all these guys, I love watching him throw the most. I think, his passes are absolutely meticulous when he gets them on target. And I think that's where the issue comes. He's really tough. You love a quarterback who can take the hits, get straight back up again. He's one of those guys. And pre-snap, he's probably the best of these guys at reading defenses, what they're going to do, figuring out the plays before they happen there. And again, that's another big thing for him. But for me, it's his consistency. He's really got to get consistent with his throws because you do see a lot of examples of them going a little bit too far, a little bit too short. He just needs to start landing them on the money regularly. And as you've alluded to, losing that much talent, that's a real pain in his draft year to lose the talent he has there. They had the best backfield probably in college football. 2 of the best receivers down there in their division. So saying that, I learned that Diami Brown's got a brother there as well. So I think he's a younger freshman there, but hopefully he probably comes through for him. But, I do really like him, but I think he's the one who's going to benefit from the winning season the most, I reckon, because of the situation he's in. If he comes through and still puts up good numbers without all those weapons that he's lost, I think it shows that he's got consistency and just delivering the big numbers. And if he can work out the little kinks in his game, I think, he's going to be right up there. And, certainly one I'd be championing as going for if he can sort out those consistency issues. But what about you, Matt? How are you feeling with Howell?
I don't like him. I'm not sold on him either. One thing I will say about his throws, and you've both said it, he throws a beautiful ball, and that's all off the basis of some terrific footwork in the pocket. He has some of the nicest feet. He kind of shimmies them about with short steps. He steps and then throws, power coming straight through from the legs. It's really, really nice to see, but there's loads of red flags. Like, loads of red flags. You've alluded to the fact that he's had loads of weapons. Well, it's an RPO-based game with 2 of the best running backs in college football behind him. Let's see how he operates without those 2 guys behind him who were seasoned by that point. He's got to have someone come in now who hasn't had that much time as a college running back. And are they going to be taken seriously as a running back, which will actually give Howell a little bit more time to throw? Because he's going to need the time to throw because he holds on to the ball too damn long. He can't make a decision quickly enough. He takes unnecessary sacks so often, and it puts the ball in jeopardy. I think he committed quite a few fumbles because He just can't get rid of the ball. Lots of times I saw on tape, especially against Notre Dame last year, he refused to throw the ball away, tried to get out the pocket when there was pressure in his face, and it resulted in really big sacks being taken or losing the ball. So he needs to be coached a bit harder. His tackles were not doing him any favors in that game in particular. The edge players were all over them. But I don't know, like Rattler, nice timing on throwing on the move, especially getting out of the pocket. I'm not sold on him. I'm really not. These first two guys are projections for me. They've got the tools, but they need to be smarter, much smarter to make it at the pro level. We've got one more year to do it, and full season, full college off season right now, they can do it. But for me, they're quite a long way off right
now. I think it's a theme of this quarterback class, really, isn't it? I don't think there's, maybe Rattler aside, there's not an outstanding guy who's ready to go now. I mean, obviously they're college guys, but I think they've all got bigger issues they need to work with and need to see noticeable improvement this year, especially if we're going to be investing, I guess, a top 2 pick in them.
I just think it's a bit rich. I think the top 2 pick would be rich for either of them right now.
I think it will be for any quarterback. I've got pretty much a lock on who I think is going to go number 1, and it won't be a quarterback.
A certain edge rusher would that be?
Yeah, Kayvon Thibodeau. Back edge. I think he'll go number 1.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll move on from a couple of guys maybe you're unsure on then, and then we'll move on to the guy who I know both of you are absolutely in love with, and I'll get through this quick so you two can discuss him a bit more. But I'm, of course, talking about Malik Willis, who is the quarterback of the Liberty Flames. So he's been there for a year. He spent 2 years at the Auburn Tigers previously, but didn't really get a look in there. But had a really good year last year with the Liberty Flames. So they're coached by a guy named Hugh Freeze. Used to be a head coach at Ole Miss, but got done for recruitment and academic violations and got 33 wins expunged. He was actually a really successful coach there, and he's one of the few coaches who's actually done a double over Nick Saban's Alabama. I think he beat them in successive years, which not many teams do, but he's rebuilding them up into a really nice outfit, in fairness. They're 18-6 under him over 2 years there, and last year they went 10-1 all told, and I think this guy came out of nowhere and had an amazing year. So I'll just go over his stats. He's played 22 games, 181 of 279 completions. It's a 65% completion rating, 2,319 passing yards, 8.3 average, 21 touchdowns, just 6 interceptions, passer rating of 155.2. Is 2020, 10 games, 170 of 265, 64% accuracy rating, 2,250 yards, 20 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 155 passer rating. Looking at their schedule this year, they're playing, now these are smaller schools, so you might not have heard of many of these, but they're playing Campbell, Troy, Old Dominion, Syracuse, UAB, Middle Tennessee, Louisiana Monroe, North Texas, UMass, Mississippi, Louisiana Lafayette, and Army. And out of those two, if you're looking for Malik Willis, they've got 2 Power 5 games. It's against Syracuse and Ole Miss. So if you really want to see what he's capable of, those are the games where he's going to have to excel in. But I mean, I'll pass him over to you two because you two absolutely love this guy and can probably talk a lot more about him than I can. Pick one of you. Malik Willis.
Shall I go first?
Well, I just want to say you forgot to mention the biggest thing, and that's for 1,000 rushing yards and 14 touchdowns. I don't think you mentioned his rushing stats. That's what makes him an elite quarterback for me.
Apologies, Ryan. That is 169 rushing attempts for 1,253 yards, a 7.4 average. I added them in very late, and they were really small, and I missed them. I'm sorry.
He is this year's Trey Lance. He is an elite dual threat quarterback. He is built like he's a man mountain, like you say. He's a strapping young fella, like you say. Like he looks like that prototypical style quarterback. You've got to hand it to Liberty. I've watched their rise. They were an FCS team up until 2017. They made the jump to the FBS, the top division. They've won a shed load of games in 3 years. They have produce this pro style offense. Like I say, a lot of that is design run. Like I say, it's not all escapability. He has got the mental capacity and the high IQ for a man in his early 20s to run an offense where he is more than capable of keeping the ball, not handing off to the running back. He's got the balls to take it and take on linebackers in open space, make guys miss. So what he does with his feet, his footwork is fantastic. And like you say, he protects the ball well when he does throw. Like you say, that's the game that he will probably want to work on most this year and show. The division, with his conference, the schedule, I know a lot of teams, it's harder than it sounds for a lot of people that have not heard some of them teams. There's some up and comers there, Louisiana, Lafayette, the Raging Cajuns, they're a fantastic team. Ole Miss, that's Hugh Freeze's old college. So that will be a big game for him. So there's going to be some games where he actually gets to show his talents on the biggest stage this year. Like everyone's going to be watching. And I think this guy offers a lot more of what we're looking at now in the NFL. Like you need these more mobile quarterbacks that are willing to do the dirty work. They're willing to take off, like say, use their legs, extend plays and drives, try to get that first down. He's probably the rawest on the list, but I think he's got a tremendous upside. And I think he's just going to, someone's going to have to take a gamble on it. He's going to be a gamble pick, I think. Whoever wants to transform their offense to more of a dual system. But I think in the long run, it's going to pay off. And I think it's someone like Anthony Lynn would love.
Yeah, so in 2020, he went for 6.7 yards per rush. Like, how mad is that? 14 rushing touchdowns last year. Unbelievable. I am in love with this guy. Multi-sport athlete, he's a baseball player as well. You know who else plays baseball, right? I'm not saying it's Patrick Mahomes, but you know, there's something about baseball players making good quarterbacks. So legitimately, their arm works differently. So you know, I throw that in jest, but you know, Liberty had their first ever ACC wins with Malik Willis's opposition, beating Syracuse and Virginia Tech, with Willis leading the way. The guy has the biggest arm of the five that I think we're going to talk about. At least for me, he does. The velocity with which he throws the ball reminds me of Stafford, but the way he runs reminds me of Cam Newton. He's 6'1", 215, but he looks like he's 6'3", 230, 240. He just looks bigger than he actually is, and he drops a shoulder and he charges. Now, that worries me slightly in terms of how long he might last in the NFL, because it might just take one big shoulder injury and that might be him. But until that time, my God, you're going to be on a hell of a ride. He has electric pace and explosion. He doesn't protect himself particularly well. When he could slide, he prefers to drop the shoulder. So, you know, chill out, man. You've done enough. He's got a really nice touch pass. His accuracy needs a little bit of work, but when he needs to drop it over a safety or over an outside corner, he can absolutely do that. Sometimes he holds the ball too long. It seems to be a theme with some of these young guys that they're kind of just determined that they're going to make a play every single time, and they just have to have it coached out of them. But compared to some of the other guys above this list, he gets through his progressions really quickly, really, really well too. So that's something I don't think is as easily coachable as some of the other things on this list. He just needs to be a bit more consistent and just have a little bit of football IQ drilled into him about when to throw the ball away and when to slide instead of drop the shoulder. And this guy could be a potential top 5 pick.
So you're in love with a guy who used to be a baseball player. He's on the shorter side. He's a hell of a dual threat quarterback. He's got a big arm on him, and he's sometimes a little bit inconsistent with his passing. And I mean, you're talking about Kyler Murray there, yet you hate him.
You say I hate Kyler Murray, but you know I don't hate Kyler Murray at all. I thought that we'd have seen more out of him by now. That's all it is with Kyler.
I'm jeffing with you.
I don't know what it is about baseball, but the quarterbacks who play baseball and get drafted to the MLB before they get to the NFL just seem to be really good. I don't know what it is or what it teaches them, like about their throwing motion, their velocity, moving the ball, their their mechanism. It just seems to ingrain something in them. Like they should all just start playing baseball.
I mean, I must say, having sat down and watched the tape on him, some of your guys' enthusiasms has started to seep over into me. I do really like it. I do see the similarities with a guy like Kyler Murray there. Obviously not on the same scale yet, not anywhere near close. There's a lot that needs polishing, but I mean, in terms of himself, I love dual threat quarterbacks. I love guys who make dynamic plays like this guy does. And I mean, he's got the build. He's about 215 pounds, so he's got the build to hold up in the NFL. I mean, I like his toughness. This guy rides tackles. He tries to hit guys, get into open space. He's not afraid to take a hit, which you want to see from guys like that. And I mean, his athletic abilities they're amazing. And some of that offensive play from them last year, you just had to sit and admire it. I mean, it did look really good, but as I've alluded to, for me, it's his decision making does need, it needs to get better. There are ill-advised throws in there, especially if he's trying to get it into tight gaps, double coverage, bits like that. He does need to work it out of his system, but hopefully, as he goes along, he will do. And ball security is also an issue with him. When he's running with it, he's not got the best grip of the ball there, and he has been hit for fumbles a few times. But I think overall, out of all of them, if this guy was to have a really good year and to work on the issues he's got, I think we'll all be calling for him by the end of this year, possibly. I mean, if you were to see noticeable improvement in him this year, and he was to have a really good year, would we be willing to spend the first on him? Would you?
Yeah. I legit. If we were number one overall, I don't see many circumstances where we take him. But I think if we are within the top 10, having done well because of our rushing game, because of our O-line, and because of our tight end, rather than our quarterback, I can definitely see us taking him. I see many scenarios where it's possible. But I do think that we'll be about there, but Goff will have done enough. But, in this scenario where we are taking a quarterback, I will absolutely take him probably between 4 and 10 if he does continue the upward trend.
I'd trade back. If we got a trade back scenario and we could take him, that would be an absolute jewel. That'd be fantastic.
So are we saying the Roar of the Lions go-to watch guy for quarterback is this one for this year? Is he the one we're looking for? I think
it'll be fun. It's going to be a
fun to watch.
Okay, right. Well, we've had a glowing review there for right, we'll move on. So next up, we're going for Desmond Ridder. Now, this was a guy who was quite highly thought of initially, but for some reason, maybe has slid down the rankings a little bit. But I mean, this is another guy who's got all the tools, and if he has a good year, could be right up there in the first round contention and someone we should be looking at. So Ridder is quarterback for the Cincinnati Bearcats. No idea how many times I've said Bengals when rehearsing that, just because it's so similar. But anyhow, he's been there for 3 years, and they are coached by a guy named Luke Fickell. He has a record there of 35-14. He spent 14 years at Ohio State, and he's turned Cincinnati into a projected top 10 team after he's won 33 regular season games in the last few years. And he's got 2 bowl wins in 3 years as well. So, this is a good sort of upcoming coach who's making a really good program here for Ridder to benefit from. So his stats, he's played 36 games, 559 of 917 completions. That's 61%. And that's one of the negatives we're going to have to talk about in a little bit when mentioning him. He's got 6,905 passing yards, 7.5 yards per throw, 57 touchdowns, 20 interceptions, passer rating of 140.4. However, 391 rushing attempts, 1,825 rushing yards, and 22 touchdowns. Now, just to quickly run through his 2020. That was 10 games, 186 of 281 completions, 66.2%, so a noticeable increase on the low average from before. 2,296 yards, 19 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, passer rating went up, 153, 98 rushing attempts, 592 rushing yards, and 12 touchdowns. Now, he's another one who's got a bit of a tougher schedule to begin with this year, which is where we're really going to see how he develops. So they play Miami, Ohio, Murray State, then Indiana, Notre Dame, Temple, UCF, that's the University of Central Florida, Navy, Tulane, Tulsa, South Florida, SMU, and East Carolina. Now, that's a tough schedule early on there. You've got teams Indiana, Notre Dame, UCF. These are teams, and he's got a few inconsistencies in his game, and if he's going to prove himself and get into the first round this year, that first stretch is going to be very crucial for him. So I'll go through a little bit what I've seen on the tape. I'll start on him first. This is another guy who has excellent arm strength. I mean, he could genuinely compete with the NFL's best, and he's got flashes of brilliance in sort of slotting balls into tight windows. He gets zip on the ball. All areas of the field are in danger with this guy. I mean, there's no question marks when it comes to the strength of his arm. When he's facing pressure, he keeps his eyes downfield, which is a critical thing for a quarterback. They don't want to get distracted, put off their plays by guys who are coming forward for him. And as I've alluded to in his stats, this is a guy with true dual threat capability. Now, they work it for him a little bit at Cincinnati, a lot of design plays there, but you've still got to make the most of them. And I mean, he's 6'4", but he's really athletic. Not the fastest guy, but I mean, at that height, he's got really long strides, help him cover the ground well there. And the biggest thing is his competitive toughness. I mean, this is a guy who chases down busted plays if there's interceptions. He's the first guy in there trying to win it back, grinds out the yardage on quarterback sneaks. And he actually played through a shoulder injury in 2019. And given we've had a guy like Stafford who has played through so many injuries over the years, that's what I want to see. You know, if a new quarterback is going to come here, I want to see someone who's tough, who's going to get straight back up and keep going, you know, after the hit, really. But obviously there are concerns. His throwing accuracy, you know, 61% average overall is not great. It got better last year, but it's going to have to improve a lot again if people are going to start taking notice of him as a first-round quarterback. And he does have difficulty with ball placement, especially on his downfield throws. And avoiding contact. He's taken a lot of sacks with the Bearcats there. That's some of it is due to the offensive line, but some of it is also down to bad judgment when in the pocket under pressure. But I mean, for me, this is a guy who I do like. I see a lot of the raw materials needed there, and I've seen, you know, lots of passages of play where he uses them quite effectively. But I think he's another like Rattler, who's going to need a really big year, and he's going to need to put some of these inadequacies in his game to bed. I mean, what's the consensus on him here? Is he really on anyone else's radar here? Because I mean, I would if he has a good year, but
I think he could be on my radar as not a first round pick. Now, I'm not sure I like the idea of taking a quarterback not in the first round, because I just think it's a waste. And, you know, you do see there'd be first-round quarterbacks and fourth-round quarterbacks and not a lot in between for a reason. But I think that the rushing ability just gives him a high floor, even if the accuracy doesn't improve. I think he could fall a long way in the draft if he doesn't have a good year and could make a good project QB in the late rounds, maybe. If he has a really big year, you know, the electricity he has as a dual threat makes him potentially worth a flyer, but that's only if we're picking later on in the first round, which I don't think is going to happen. So, not really, I guess. I don't see many realistic scenarios where he actually gets up to where I think we're going to be.
I agree. He's not a first-round quarterback. It baffled me the decision to even return. He was draft eligible. He's got 3 good years of tapes. For me, Cincinnati Bearcats have reached their ceiling. They're a good team, but they're never going to be a great team. So I question why he actually returned. I'm pretty sure a bad year will see his stock plummet. Like, the only way I see this year going is him doing more damage than good. I think he should have declared last year when he was ready for the draft. Like I say, the dual threat is like, it raises his floor, but the accuracy issues are something that are going to be quite damning. This guy is a middle second rounder. This guy's kind of like a Davis Mills. He is a project. He may be forced into a starting role one day, but I'm not sure he has everything. Like, despite the big frame, like you say, I do question about how he will protect himself at the next level. I do have those questions about Willis as well. Is he going to be able to ingrain it to himself when he slides? Because he is going to be quite a heavy rusher. Like, hope he's going to be able to protect that large frame. I do think, like you say, he has got reasonable accuracy. That's going to be exploited to the next level if it doesn't rapidly improve. So this is someone I would be avoiding unless we're picking someone a fair bit later on. But I don't think he's ever going to get to the point of where we will be picking earlier on.
I don't know. Maybe he's this year's Jamie Newman for me, because I think I was suckered in a little by his. I mean, I still maintain he's pretty good, but maybe suckered in by the dual quarterback threat. I'm not sure, but we'll have to see. I guess he's one of those who, if he has an amazing year, we might start talking about again. But it remains to be seen. I think it's the same with a lot of these guys. Inconsistency is probably the word of the day with a lot of them. But anyhow, we'll move on to our fifth guy who we've highlighted, and this is someone who we're quite familiar with and we've said a lot about on this podcast already because of his association with Amon-Ra St. Brown, and that is Kedon Slovis. And yeah, Ryan instantly is shaking his head. I'll get to you, Ryan, don't worry. Let me get his stats out and then you can rip him to shreds. So yeah, Kedon Slovis, he's the quarterback for the USC Trojans. As I say, that's where we drafted Amon-Ra St. Brown from this year. So you may have seen a bit of footage of him already if you've been watching footage of St. Brown this year. So he's been there for 2 years. He's played 18 games, 459 of 656 completions. That's a 70% completion rating, 5,423 passing yards, 8.3 average, 47 touchdowns, 16 interceptions. So that's about a 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, and a passer rating of 158. And he's got 68 rushing attempts for minus 114 rushing yards. So that's maybe not the best stat to use there. But anyhow, his 2020 was quite short, as was St. Brown. 6 games, 177 of 264 completions, 67%, 1,921 yards, 7.3 yards per average. 17 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, so that's nearly 2-to-1 on that ratio, and 144 passer rating, 23 rushing attempts for minus 57 rushing yards. And just a word on his coach there, Clay Helton. He's 45 and 23 with USC. He's been there since 2010. He's been the quarterback coach, the offensive coordinator, and then moved on to the head coach. And fun fact, the quarterbacks in his time there include Matt Barkley, Cody Kessler, and Sam Darnold. So a bit of a quarterback tree there. I'm trying to make the point for him here, but however, he did play under Kurt Warner at high school. So I mean, if you're going to learn from someone, learn from a Hall of Fame quarterback, right? So he's had the best of the both when it comes to coaching trees there. He's not helped by USC's schedule this year either. It's the third toughest in the Pac-12, and they're facing teams such as Notre Dame and BYU, and I think they're projected to maybe go about 5-7, so it might be a bit of a rough year for them. But I'll start with you, Rye, if you want. I know you're very strongly feeling on Kedon Slovis. First round pick for the Lions?
Absolutely not. When it comes to the big games, he goes absolutely missing. He has got no bottle whatsoever. You just have to look at 2019, 2020, when it came down to it, the games with Iowa in the bowl game and the 2 games against Oregon, when they were ranked and it counted, he showed his flaws. He has got terrible ball security. Sometimes I have no idea what he's looking at when he throws downfield. If we were having this conversation a year ago, I'd be giving it benefit of doubt. 2019, he had a great year, like you say, 30 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. But no, the body of work to 2019, it's like he's fallen off a cliff. Like, I don't know what's happened. Like, I know it's a change, like Clay Helton, like things changed, but he had a very solid receiving group. Like, this is a guy that had trusty guys like Micah Pittman Jr., he had Amon-Ra St. Brown, but no, he's going to end up being a turnover machine. I just see Sam Darnold 2.0, unfortunately. Like, he's got an all right arm, but we showed in the footage the other day, like, he excels at the short to medium range, but when he even looks downfield, he telegraphs everything. Like, he is an interception waiting to happen when he's throwing deep. He doesn't know how to look off a safety. like he will get eaten alive in the NFL. I would be staying well away from him. Someone will pick him, like someone is going to think, oh, there's something there to work with. But I think it's all up there, and I think he is a proof. He's going to be a bust candidate. I'd love for him to prove me wrong, but in a division that doesn't play defense, he still manages to throw loads of interceptions, and that is worrying.
Matt, are we going to give the listeners a reason to look out for our top 5 quarterbacks to look out for this year?
I'll just say that Steve has just commented on Twitch saying USC quarterbacks 20 years of busts. The last decent one was Carson Palmer, and he was on the bottom end of the Dalton scale. That's a bit harsh on Carson Palmer, especially after his move. But Caden Slovis, he is. Who was the particularly immobile quarterback who went to the Patriots in this year's draft?
Jones.
Matt Jones.
He's a poor man's Mac Jones. He's Mac Jones who sometimes makes bad decisions. Like, that's not good. When you've got in there a pocket passer quarterback who, from his rushing yard average, which last year was minus 2.5 yards per attempt, this is not someone who can escape pressure. This means you must have a good O-line if you're going to take him, because you must keep pressure away from him. Now we have that, so it makes him a potential option. But what happens when our young guys on the O-line need to get paid? I mean, you're almost hamstringing yourself into having to pay your O-line because your quarterback can't hang without it, and then who are you paying on your offense otherwise? Who are the weapons you can get in? I think Slovis is going to hamstring any team he ends up on because of his downside. But this is someone who you could only consider taking if you make super smart decisions. You know, the sort of Tom Brady-esque, yes, I'm a pocket passer, I can shift a little bit in the pocket, but I'm going to read the defense early and I'm going to deliver an on-target pass more often than not. And Slovis had a great 2019, there's no doubt about that. But in 2020, he started passing into double coverage regularly. But that's not a good sign. He's just making bad decisions. His throws lack the zip that you'd want from a pocket passer. I'd say there's not enough upside, but I don't really see much upside with him at all. He's going to be someone who's going to be a capable backup quarterback in the NFL. He'll be someone who has a good journeyman career with a handful of starts to his name, and that'll be it.
Like Matt Barkley, but without the Heisman.
It wasn't the best list of quarterbacks to come out there. I suppose jury's out on Darnold, but
No, like I said, we've had to name him because once you get past like Malik Willis, there's a big drop off. You've got your 4 guys, and then there's quite a big drop off to everyone. Like, it's the best of a bad bunch there.
Well, Beans is all the negatives right there. I'll pile mine in. He's got an injury history as well. He had a sprained elbow in 2019 and he sprained one of his shoulders in 2020. So there is injury history there, and there was suggestion he wasn't playing at 100% last year. The big thing to see, and what a lot of analysts picked up on as well, Matt mentioned he doesn't get zip in his throws. Last year he was trying to put a great deal of effort into doing so, and that caused a lot of accuracy issues, a lot of wobble balls, and we've all seen it when watching Amon-Ra play. The amount of times he had to adjust the throws that were just behind him, just in front. There were precious few that were right on him in stride. And I think that maybe was one of the reasons explain why he was trying to increase the zip in his throws. But I'll get onto some positives for him, because there are. His leadership is one of his biggest qualities at the minute. The Trojans won 3 comeback games last year in the final 2 minutes of the game, and that's in just 6 games. That there shows an ability to win under pressure. Half your games, you're behind 2 minutes to go. You manage to bring it back for your team. There are positives to see there in his leadership, the ability to win under pressure. And he does have a high level of footballing intelligence. He does survey the field really well. He moves quick between his reads. The throws maybe not great, but the path to get in there is pretty good. And he also is able to manipulate the pocket pretty well against pressure. So, yeah, as was been said, maybe the same with Ridley. He's going to have to do a lot, maybe with his accuracy, getting the zip onto balls a bit more, been a lot more noticeable if he's going to be taken seriously as a main guy in this draft upcoming. But I think you've said it, Ryan. There's maybe a bit of a drop off after Malik Willis. But I mean, So we've gone through the 5 guys there. So I think we're all saying, Rattler and Howell are the guys to watch for sure. If one of those has a big year, some noticeable performances, and if we're picking high, he's going to be the guy to go after. But do you worry about Malik Willis being at a small school and his schedule affecting if he's going to get really high up in the draft? Or maybe is that just a good thing for us?
It's one of those things, I think, where actually it will elevate your stock or it will tank your stock. In the face of adversity, in the face of not having the elite weapons that some of the guys at big schools have, can you still elevate the players around you? That's the proper NFL test. If you can do that, that shoots you into number 1 contention. It does. But more likely than not, you'll fail because quarterbacks need help. And if you don't get that from your team, you'll find yourself dropping down draft boards, and it may not be your fault. So, it's a boom or bust thing. And, you see some small school players, like in this draft, be worth 3 first-round picks to go number 3 overall. It happens, but it's rare.
I genuinely think since the emergence of Carson Wentz, when teams play for FCS level or they have them on their schedule, I think people now don't look at it as much of a setback. Like, it's a thing, like, it's the old cliche, you can only beat what's in front of you. If Liberty have got 12-0 next year and he comfortably dispatches all them teams with, Matt says, no household names, I can't name any of the Liberty wide receivers, even though I know they're a good school. So he's operating within his means. If he turns around and puts on a show next year, I don't think anyone will care about the strength of his schedule. Like I say, if he makes hard work of teams on that and he has bad games, they're going to be the first ones that get highlighted. So for me, it doesn't personally matter as long as he puts up numbers and wins games comfortably. I'll be more than happy to take a risk on him because I think that will just shows a winning mentality, even when he's working with a somewhat slapdash supporting cast. No disrespect to them.
Well, there we have it. Malik Willis, the guy the Roar of the Lions are telling you to watch at quarterback next year. Now, we've gone through the 5 main guys there. I think me and Ryan have picked out a wild card also who might come out of left field and put himself in the conversation maybe for the Lions. You want to start with your guy, right? Because I've been nattering on a little while.
Yeah. You've got to look at this guy carefully. Like, what I'm going to tell you might be a bit alarming, but Matt Corral, the quarterback of the Ole Miss Rebels, he's 6 foot, he's lean, but he's explosive. He is an absolute dynamite. Of the passes he attempted last year, he got 70% and he threw for 3,337 yards, 7th nation. He threw for 29 touchdowns, but there was 14 interceptions, but those were 2 meltdowns. He had games last year where he threw for 6 interceptions and 5 interceptions. Like I say, he had 2 historic meltdowns. He only plays in shootouts. Nearly every game last year, the total points was above 60 or combined for nearly 80 points. He is in the most exciting games playing football. He's got an absolute fantastic arm. Like, he can make every single throw in the book. He sometimes has a bad day, and when it goes bad, it goes really bad. But he has games where he will throw 6 to 4 to 3 touchdowns with no interceptions. He will keep the ball perfectly. If he can stay in the headspace and he can be protected at the O-line, if Ole Miss have a good season this year, which they've got a pretty hard schedule. Like, I'm not going to lie, the SEC is difficult and they're in a bit of a transition period. But I think he is going to be someone that, if he has a fantastic year off of what he did last year, is going to be thrust, not into the first round, but it could be like a 2nd round pick. He has got so much stuff to work with. I think he's a proper little small dynamo. He could also hurt his stock immensely if he has another game this year where he throws 6 interceptions. People are going to write him off and say he's too erratic. But I think there is a diamond in there. There's something to work with if someone can just get him to calm down at times when he panics sometimes. Like, it's going to be down to composure, but I think he is going to be someone that is going to be incredibly fun to watch. They're going to score loads and concede loads. He's going to do his best. He gives everything out there. He gets smacked at times, like say he can eat sacks, but that's purely for sometimes he just holds on the ball too long. He's surveying the field. He reads the ball well. He reads the field well. I'm just hoping he's going to deliver like a complete season, and he's someone that could start to generate a bit of momentum in 2021.
I think you've put it very well there. I know I've not watched too much of him, but in circles talking about this a little bit, his name does come up quite often. So I'll be interested to see what he does this year. Matt, have you seen anything on tape of Corral?
No, I haven't. But he's under Lane Kiffin, and that's gonna, that's a properly good coach. So that'll help. And yeah, I like the excitement of the boom or bust sort of thing there. I'm just looking through some notes of his while you were speaking, and there's a few mock drafts already that have him going number 2 overall to the Eagles that I've seen. So, and PFF have him as the number 2 ranked quarterback in this class.
Yeah, there's a lot there to work with. If he just has to tidy the game up.
It's just all projection right now. So, if he can minimize mistakes, there's a diamond there, as you say.
Right, well, I'll wrap up the quarterback talk then with my my wild card to watch. And I know this guy's on a lot of people's radars. I was speaking with him about, I was speaking with Taib about him on Twitter the other day. This guy is Carson Strong. Now, he's the quarterback for the Nevada Wolfpack. He's been there for 3 years. The last 2, he's been a starter. So just to quickly go through his stats there, 20 games, 66.7% completion rated for his passes, 5,200 passing yards, 38 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 140 passer rating. Again, not one of those who's going to really do much in the rushing game for you. 88 attempts for minus 97 yards. But you look at his 2020, and this is where his numbers start to come out. So he only played in 9 games. Got 249 of 355 completions. That was just a shade over 70% passing accuracy. 2,858 passing yards, 27 touchdowns, and just 4 interceptions with a passer rating just over 160. This guy had a really good 2020, and he's in part of a decent Nevada team there. Now he's got a tough schedule. ESPN are predicting they're going to be having a 7-5 this year. They're facing some tough teams: California, Boise State, I think I pronounced that right, San Jose State, who they lost to last year, Kansas State, who they lost to last year. So this is a guy who's going to get a chance to prove himself this year. If this Nevada team stick out from the pack, no pun intended, this is a guy who's going to come on a lot of people's radars. So the coach there, Jay Norvell, he's got a fairly average 25-22 record with them, but this guy is very highly touted. He's been getting interest from Power 5 teams who are interested in services. This Nevada team is pretty good. As for Carson Strong himself, this guy has phenomenal arm strength, better than any of the 5 guys we've talked about. For me, previously, I mean, obviously it's just one aspect of his game, but no area of the field is safe when this guy is making throws. I mean, it's just simply phenomenal, his arm strength. This guy's patient. He's good with his decision making. His throwing motions are solid. Ball placement for the most part is really good. And, this is a guy who's just exciting. He's like Malik Willis. This is a guy who just, makes the offense exciting to watch. Now, he's on the periphery because there are issues with him, of course. I mean, his accuracy is mediocre. It's inconsistent. And again, he's another one of these guys who does need to get a little bit better. I mean, last year, 70% passer rating, that was pretty good. He's going in the right direction. Under pressure, he struggles. He's one of these guys who just throws it away downfield, usually results in it overshooting passes, or if he gets picked sometimes, and he needs to get better at dealing with pressure. His ball placement needs to get better, and his footwork does as well. I mean, these are issues you're going to expect from maybe a guy on the periphery, but I mean, this guy is really good. Just to watch him throw is amazing when he gets it right. And I think if he can get a little bit of consistency in there, his name is going to be in and about some of the best quarterbacks in the class next year. And I know I'm not on my own thinking that. So he's going to be really fun to watch. I don't know whether anyone has anything to say on him really to add on or.
Yeah, I've seen a bit of Carson Strong, and his schedule is hard. MWC, the Mountain West Conference, where Boise State have dominated for years, San Jose State have now stepped up. That is hard football. They play really hard football. So Nevada are a well-drilled team. And one thing I look at is like, let's look at the 2 losses this year. His completion percentage against San Jose State was 68.8, against Hawaii was 80. Like, he's not a guy that loses games. Like, he didn't make decisions in those games that cost him. He was still moving the ball. He was still completing his passes. Didn't, like say, there was no interceptions. So he's the kind of guy that is able to lead an offense down the field, and it's up to other players. Like you say, he relies on heavily, like, he needs a strong run game if he's going to win games. He can't do it all on his own. Unfortunately, Nevada Wolfpack ask him to do it all on his own. He carries the team on his back with a strong arm. He's got a big frame. He's as accurate as he can be. I think, like I said, there is a really good player there. I'd love to see what he could do with some bigger names, some more talented roster. I think he would be probably one of the leading quarterbacks in the nation on a different team. But he does the best with what he can work with. And I think he's someone that's slowly going under the radar. A decent year for him, and I think he is going to slowly have a murmurs, like say, he could be back 4 or 5 off the board.
I think you've said it. I think you've said it pretty well there. In fairness, I mean, the last line I've written about him in my notes is he has starter potential if he's paired with the right quarterback coach. I think the right guy who knows how to use him properly. But for me, I mean, he's going to be one of the ones I'm watching most closely this year and see how he develops. Because I mean, if he does, God, there is a hell of a player in there. But we've spent enough time on the QBs, so I don't know whether you want to move it on.
Just one question from Steve in the Twitch chat. He says, "Any thoughts on JT Daniels, boys?"
Injuries. Those injuries worry me.
I like JT Daniels. I like that Georgia team, and I mean, I don't know if we've really spoke about college this year, but I've tipped them to do very well this year, and I think they're going to have a really good year. But like Ryan says, the injuries are just a concern with him. If he goes injury-free this year and that Bulldogs side perform very well, then I'd be quite interested in him. Where at? Not sure. Depends on how he does. But that Georgia team is one of the ones I'm looking forward to seeing most in terms of the actual team itself. I think they're going to do really well this year.
Plus, I have an issue with quarterbacks who jump ship, that aren't willing to fight for a spot. The fact when he transferred to Georgia, like you say, because he didn't give it a real go at the original program, that really is a proper gripe for me. Players that just jump ship and didn't necessarily fight as hard as he could for the starting job. I know he's had injuries, but he took the easy road out, jumped to a team where he knew was a starting position available. There's an immense amount of pressure on him this year. Like, he has got a lot riding on his shoulders. He's going to have to deliver this year for Georgia. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it pans out. But no, I think he's got a bit of his medical history does worry me at the next level. He's got to have an elite year to probably even be on the radar.
All right, I think that does it for QBs. But now we move on to wide receivers, Ant.
Yeah, so obviously when we were deciding this list of what the Lions might be looking for in the draft next year, I think wide receiver was commonly agreed. We're going to need one next year. We're possibly going to need one quite high, depending on how the guys do this year. But I think we're going to be in need of a wide receiver one. So we thought we'd take a look at the next crop of wide receivers coming through. Obviously, the last 2 years have just been bountiful for wide receivers coming through. I think so many have been taken in these drafts, so many good prospects coming through. And obviously we're going to need one next year. So we thought we'd take a look at them. So again, pick 5 guys out here. I think there might be a few wild cards in from the guys as well, because I think a few of the consensus top 5 aren't on my list here. But we're going to start with a pair of Ohio State guys first, because, where else do you go? Some of the big guns do come from Ohio State. So this first one, and this is the guy I'm looking forward to seeing most this year, he's in legitimate contention for me to want to take, is Garrett Wilson. Now, Garrett Wilson's been with the Buckeyes for 2 years now. He's played 21 games, got 73 receptions for 1,151 receiving yards. That's an average of nearly 16 yards per throw. He's got 11 touchdowns and just a couple of rush attempts for 67 yards. 2020, he had a really decent year, although there was a lot of competition at Ohio State last year. Some good players there, but 8 games, 43 receptions, 723 receiving yards, nearly 17 yards per throw. He got 6 touchdowns as well. But again, there were a lot of mouths to feed at Ohio State last year. Now, just to mention the quarterback he's going to be playing with this year, because this may impact the wide receivers going into this season. Ohio State's new quarterback, CJ Stroud, it's his first year. He's not played a game before, so he's going to be playing with a rookie quarterback. So it's going to be important that he creates a link with him very early if he wants to have a great year and go as high as I think he will. But I love this guy. I'm going to go through all his positives first. I mean, break it down. For me, most of his game's already just about there. So before the catch, this is a guy who is fluid, he's sudden, and he's really explosive as an athlete. He's got suddenness and twitch that gains separation on the line of scrimmage, and he's got an ability to disconnect in his upper and lower body, so you're not sure which direction he's actually going. It's not like he's looking one way and he's gone. Defensive backs can't really tell where he's going, and it's just such a method of deception for him. And he's got feet as well that are they're swift, they're precise, and he just has a lot of defensive backs on toast. He's got his head and his eyes he uses as well, feigning intent. And to be honest, it's just deception is the word for him, getting off the line of scrimmage. His athleticism means that he's got good route running ability. He can stack direction changes. He's got a torrid short area burst when he's off the stems of his route runs. He's got explosiveness to beat defenders in the open field, and he can adjust to throws. But when it comes to reading defense, he's got awareness of the blind spots in coverage, and he's got a really expansive route tree for his age. He's only, I think it's 19 going on 20 now, and he can already run the vast majority of routes there. He's not the biggest receiver in the world. He's only 6 foot tall. He's 188 pounds. So you're thinking, is it maybe a bit on the lighter side? But I mean, his contested catch ability, I mean, his ability to vertical rise, he gets up there with the best of them. He can leap like a salmon. His body contortion in his hands make him a nightmare for defenders to deal with. And it's, this is enhanced by his ball tracking prowess. He knows where the ball is in the air. He knows when he's got to go up to get it, and he comes down with it, especially on the deep throws in the deep third. And he's one of these receivers. He proactively secures catches. He actually seeks them out with his hands. He doesn't try and get them into his body. He puts his hands out there and he can snag them from really wherever he is. His sideline awareness, it's really good. If he's up there trying to get contested catches, he lands in play. He knows exactly where he is. And for me, it's just, there's a lot there to like about him. He can run out the backfield as well if you need him. He's a really shifty ball carrier. He doesn't have the elite top end speed of some guys, but when you have the deception skills he does, when you have the high end speed that he does, he's just an absolute nightmare to defend against. And if we're going to be going for a wide receiver, if he has a really good year, if he creates a rapport with CJ Stroud, I think he's the first wide receiver who's going to be on my radar this year. Now, I said there are not many issues with his games. There are a couple. He is prone to drop in sometimes when anticipating contact. He's not the biggest guy. So sometimes, if there's a big back bearing down on him, it will distract him and he does drop passes. And his blocking obviously suffers because he's not the biggest guy in the world either. But again, you're getting that much out of him for his receiving abilities. If he can even only improve that a little bit, I think he's going to be an absolutely amazing receiver going in this year's draft. I don't know about you guys, if you've really seen much of him, his tape-wise, but for me, I absolutely love him. And I think he's the better of those two wide receivers there, even though people are going to be high on the next one as well.
Well, yeah, we won't name the next one because it's coming up. Like say, last year I was very high on the next one, but I've been watching stuff and I've made the decision, like say a lot of people have, that he's surpassed and become the wide receiver one. Like you say, he's just got this knack, and like you say, for the body control. He doesn't rely on his body. He doesn't need numbers to hit him square in under the chest. Like, he's got fingers like granite. Like you say, he's able to haul in those passes. He's got that range. He's very flexible. He's able to go up at the big catch, stick a mitt out, haul something in for one-handed catch. Like, he's very spectacular in that, like you say, which can be a quarterback star. Anything that's thrown a little behind him or a bit overshot at, he puts in maximum effort. He does his very best to haul that in, even if he knows he's going to get a shot, he's going to get hit, like say, because he can be running into traffic. He's a for his size, he's gutsy. Like, he's a brave wide receiver. He's strong as well. And I think even with a freshman quarterback, even no matter what CJ Stroud delivers, I think he's going to be putting up a great number in probably what is the nation's best tandem of wide receivers potentially.
So, for me, one of the most impressive things about him compared to some of the other guys we're going to talk about is he makes as many big plays inside as out. The guy wins in the slot, he wins in the outside. He is someone who does everything to a very high standard without perhaps being elite at anything. He's a very good all-rounder. But like you say, he doesn't have that elite speed, that top-end home run speed. That isn't to say he can't get separation, because he often does, and I think that will translate to the pros, but he's a great route runner. On the whole, he's a great catcher. As you say, he can be spooked, but generally speaking, he's a great catcher. Great ability. It tracks the ball really well when it's in the air. Lots of kind of catches that come over his head, and he still manages to grab a hold of it. One-handed catches, the guy can really do it all, and the high average, it's got the highest average per reception of any of the 5 in 2020 that we're going to talk about. And I think that says something. The guy is very, very good. And that's all there is to it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, he screams, definitely potential wide receiver 1 somewhere. But I mean, if he can just maybe ink out those couple of inconsistencies in his game, he's going to be right up there. Possibly, within the top 5 conversation, depending on how the quarterbacks do. But, Ohio State, as Ryan said, they've got a hell of a tandem here this year. And I'll move it on because obviously we know who's coming next. Well, those with the college game might do a little more. And that's Chris Olave. Was the main guy there at Ohio State last year. A lot of the eyes were focused on him. He's been at Ohio State for 3 years. The last 2 of those, he's been a starter. I mean, obviously they have such a succession of wide receivers come out there. It does take a little while to get in the team, but he's played 27 games, 110 receptions, 1,766 receiving yards, and 22 touchdowns. 2020, it was a shorter year for him. 7 games, 50 receptions, 729 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns. Now, he's taken a risk this year because he could have declared for the draft this year. I believe. I mean, they think they were maybe projecting him at the end of the first round, but I think I think it was Jalen Waddle the year before. He chose to go back for another year in the hope of increasing his stock. No, Devonta Smith. It was Devonta Smith who went back for an extra year, and he ended up improving his draft stock rapidly. But again, CJ Stroud's the guy. Throw into him. He's not played a game yet, and he's going to have to hope that he can create a bond with him very quickly and keep up the kind of numbers he has. But in terms of Olave, his athleticism is what stands out. He was a former high school sprinter. He's got excellent speed play. He's not going to be the quickest guy out of all the receivers this year, but he's got the play speed to cause problems for defensive backs. And his burst is probably one of the best of the guys here. He's got a stellar ability just to blast past defensive backs at the line of scrimmage, create the separation very quickly. A lot of his throws you'll see at Ohio State, he's got no one near him because he creates separation that quickly. Just using his combo, his explosion, his play speed, the fluidity of his movement. I mean, it is really good to watch, and his footwork is also really impressive there as well. His football intelligence is another one of his good things. His spatial awareness, he finds the soft spots in opposition defenses. He knows where to hurt you, and he puts himself in the best positions to be able to do so. But one of his biggest calling cards is his versatility. I mean, Ohio State use him everywhere, whether it's out the backfield, in the slot, out wide, all sorts of manner of ways they use him, and he does really well. And that versatility is very highly valued, obviously, by a lot of NFL teams. So he's probably going to, if he has another good year, he's another one who's probably going to be going well into the first round, and one we might well be looking at in the draft next year. But on his not so good side, obviously, his frame is a bit of a problem. 6'1", less than 190 pounds. He lacks physicality, which causes issues. Downfield blocking especially, which suffers because of his strength. He's not the best at that. And obviously a lot of NFL teams do covet the ability of receivers to block, especially Dan Campbell. I think he made it clear that he wants guys who can block very well there, and then his contested catch ability. As I've said earlier, a lot of times you see him, he's got separation from his guys, but if he's ever in contested catch situations, don't get me wrong, he can win them, but there are also a lot of times when he loses out as well, so his frame may hurt him this year, maybe similar a bit to Devonta Smith, who was talked about maybe top 6, 7, and he ended up dropping a few places, but he's another one. It's going to be good to see. It's going to be good to see what sort of a season he has, but for me, he's the second guy at Ohio State I'd be taking in the draft this year. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I'll go up. Like you say, for me, he didn't need to return to college. Like, he would have been a first round pick last year. He's got all the tools he needs. He does the versatility. I only think he's returned because, like you say, he has got that issue of strength and physicality. When he gets to the next level, he's going to be asked to block outside against the likes of these elite corners that play a lot of man coverage. They're going to be very physical with him. He needs to prove to us that he is strong enough to sustain a block on the outside and that he can help in the run game, like you say, and work on his contested catches, like you say, when he's going to notice he's going to take a hit or he's going to have someone draped all over him if he can haul that pass in. They're the only real downsides for him, like you say. He's a gadget weapon. He finds that, like Amon-Ra, he finds the soft coverage very well. He does a lot of good work across the middle. Like, he can find that space between the backers, safeties and lines, sitting zone coverage. He can just take the reception and then he'll turn and look upfield, which is always a great thing. Like you say, he likes to get the yards after coverage if possible. Like you say, he will turn, make a guy miss, but he's a very reliable target, which I think is something that can't be too understated. I trust him. He's got reasonably good hands. And I think, like you say, he's a very good complement to Garrett Wilson. Like you say, they complement each other very well. They operate well inside and out. And I think he's going to do another solid body of work. And I think he's going to be he's kind of like the Rashad Bateman's place. You're going to get like 18 to 23, that kind of space. I think you get him in the draft. So it could be very good value if we're going to, because we'll have 2 picks. So, like you say, in that second pick, we could be in the market for someone like him.
Yeah, I definitely see that. That's the sort of place I expect him to go. As Ant was saying, he's got explosion, and that really jumps off. He has separation very quickly in a route, but he does lack that top end speed, which, he's not going to run a 4.2 something. He's probably not going to run in the 4.3s. If I'm honest, he'll be a 4.4 guy, I would expect, 4.45 or something like that. Fast enough to do it at the pros and be a separation guy, but I don't know, the physicality is something that worries me with him. It really does. Reliable guy, as Ryan was saying, but I worry about him translating to the pros more than I do Garrett Wilson, for sure.
That's fair. But I mean, I think we can agree that if we are going for wide receiver next year, Ohio State could be an early stopping point for us if we are going for one. But I'll move on. And like with the quarterbacks, the third guy we went through, maybe one who wasn't so well known but has the potential to be excellent. It's the same with this guy. So we're now going to look at Treylon Burks. Now, this is a wide receiver from the Arkansas Razorbacks. He's been there. Yeah, exactly.
Arkansas, man.
Oh, God, Arkansas. Why the hell is it an S?
I can't let that one go.
Oh, it's Arkansas. Yeah, we know it is. It's spelled that way. I'm sorry. The Arkansas Razorbacks. He's been there for 2 years. So he's played 20 games, 80 receptions, 1,295 receiving yards, 16 yards per average per catch, 7 touchdowns. And he also averages about 5 yards on carries, of which he's had 24. So not bad at rushing either. It's 2020, 9 games, 51 receptions, 820 receiving yards, 16 yards per catch, 7 touchdowns. So might not jump out of you off the screen there, but he's in a very difficult situation. I'll just go through a little bit of the Arkansas situation here to let you know this is a guy he's going to benefit the most from putting up big numbers this year because of the situation he's in. So to start with, his quarterback is a guy called KJ Jefferson, who's a third-year sophomore. It's his first year starting, and he's got less than 500 career passing yards at the college level. So this is, a guy who's going to be starting for the first time. So again, like the guys at Ohio State. He's going to be having to bond with a new quarterback on the field. But Arkansas, bless them, have what is considered the strongest schedule, the hardest schedule this year. And just to put it into perspective, there's 12 games. Some of the teams they play, Texas A&M, who were slated to have a really big year. Georgia, same with them. Auburn, always dangerous. LSU, we know how good they are. And then just around that all off, they've got Alabama as well. This is a team that went 3-7 last year, have a rookie quarterback, and they've got some of the toughest fixtures going. And I mean, those are just the ones I've mentioned. The rest of them aren't really much better than that. But in terms of Treylon Burke himself, I mean, this guy he's a big guy, 6'3", 225 pounds. He's got the physicality of a big body playmaker, but he's deceptively athletic for a guy his size, and he's got a well put together frame. Now, one of his biggest assets are his hands. This guy has insanely big hands, and just to put it into perspective, he has to have his gloves on match day custom made 5XL. That's how big his hands are. These things are absolutely huge, and obviously instant benefits that come from that is catchability, amazing, and it also allows him to be physical in the ground game. He's willing and able to do blocking downfield, gets hands on his man, and they're done if he does. But that's obviously in the modern day, blocking for a wide receiver is a big thing, and he's got the tools to do so. In terms of his receiving skills, he's fluid in his movement. He's a handful in coverage, again, due to his size. He's deceptively quick for a guy that size. Again, not going to be the quickest at a combine this year, but it's plenty there. He allows him to go through soft spots in coverage. He's another one of those who can see those gaps before they're there and exploit them. And his ability to gain yards after catch is something that comes out as well. Again, his speed, his size, his athleticism. He doesn't get brought down by first contact very often, and that's a big thing. He'll take the hit. He'll be able to get extra yards, and teams are really going to value that high there. I mean, he's a slot guy primarily, but they also do use him out wide, and they do use him in the backfield as well. As I say, he averages 5 yards a carry on 25 carries, so there's something there for him. And on a rare occasion, he's actually also used as a sixth lineman, the position that's usually reserved for a tight end. He's actually been utilized in that spot again due to his hands and his strength. So he brings in a lot of versatility for a team. He brings in explosive speed. He brings in good catching ability. So there's a lot there to like. He's just in a very difficult situation now. Obviously, he has issues. He has drop issues. That's not to do with his hands. So there is a problem with his concentration, and that needs to be worked on, because that's a big thing going to the next level. You can't unnecessarily drop catches. There's nothing to do with anything outside there. And also Arkansas, he's one of their biggest weapons there. They manufacture a lot of touches for him. He gets on the ball without really having to do much, which means he doesn't have much of a route tree. It's not his fault, because obviously they just keep giving the ball to him, so he doesn't need to run loads of different routes to get it. But that can be a make or break issue at the next level. But in terms, again, of the raw skills you're looking for wide receiver, this guy has everything, and he's a monster. And especially if he shows up in some of these big games, this strength of schedule is either going to ruin him or it's going to make him. If he can have some big games against the likes of LSU and Alabama, he's really quickly going to come onto the radar, and someone we absolutely need to be keeping an eye on. And he's the one out of probably all the receivers apart from Garrett who I'm going to be watching this year. And I do hope he has a good year and is in consideration for the draft.
Yeah, so for me, the most impressive thing, and with most players, I kind of preach the don't watch the highlight tape. You don't learn anything about them. But with this guy, watch the highlight tape because it's so fun. It takes often 3 or 4 defenders to bring this guy down. Now, I know that might be poor college tackling technique, but my God, the number of touchdowns he's created from like the 20-yard line, just dragging people with him, it's unbelievable. He is bigger than anyone in the secondary. Like, no one's going to be that size. As soon as he gets beyond the line of scrimmage, he's the tallest player there. And he shows it. Immense physical ability. And he's faster than he looks on tape. Because of his size, it may mean that he looks a bit slow, but don't be fooled. I really, really like this guy. But you're right. The strength of schedule will test him, and I'm looking forward to this season at Arkansas for Treylon Burks.
From what you've said, it actually sounds like this guy could work better maybe as a tight end at the next level because he's got that limited route tree. Like I say, it sounds like Arkansas haven't asked him to actually do too much. And his big numbers last year obviously helped because they got a star transfer in Felipe Franks at quarterback. So for 1 year, he managed to have some good quarterback player and put up good numbers. So that does show promising. Like you say, he's very raw. So like you say, he's got the size, he's got the hands, he's got the deceptive speed. You don't ask him to do too much. So it's a question of, is he willing to learn and is he able to put it all together? He sounds like, say, he's got some raw tools there. Like you say, he's worked in line, running back. I think there's something there. There's a lot to work with. Like in the middle rounds of the draft, like I think he could be an absolute steal. Like this lad, if he puts up some good numbers against some of the elite defenses this year and they work out how to do things, with expanding on his route tree, I think he could be someone that could actually be really fun to watch. And if you just give him in the ball, like I say, line him at tight end, put him in the backfield, ask him to do things. Like you say, he sounds like he's a willing worker, tough physical, and he just wants to touch the ball as much as he can.
I think that's the thing. He fits a lot of the requisites that we'd be looking for on our team. Obviously, a receiver who's a sixth lineman, great. A receiver who can block, great. Receiver who can, make good contested catches, take defenders out of the equation, great. And yeah, just to echo what I said earlier, yeah, it's going to be great to see him this year. I'm going to hopefully try and see a little bit of Arkansas, and I'm going to try and find out why they call it that, because it's Arkansas to me, and I don't care otherwise. But if anyone could explain it, that would be great. But yeah, he's for me, he's one of the guys you've got to watch out for this year, especially if he flashes against some of these better defenses, because some of these teams he's coming up against, God, that is a horrible schedule for them, and they're definitely not going to be having a winning record by the end of the year. But we'll move on anyhow. So guy number 4, guy by the name of Drake London. Now, this guy is a receiver for the USC Trojans. So obviously, we've mentioned a little about this already. His quarterback this year is going to be Kedon Slovis. So whether that's a good or a bad thing for him, the rest of the panel will probably say bad, but we'll see as we go. So he's played 14 games there, 72 receptions, 1,069 receiving yards, 15 yards per throw, 8 touchdowns. Again, 2020 was a shortened year, just the 6 games. But he still got in that time 33 receptions, 502 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns. So it was a quieter year, but he puts up some good numbers. But for me, the big thing with this guy is his size, and it's the first thing that jumps out on tape. He's 6'5". He's one of those guys, if you're watching tape, you don't need an arrow pointing at him as to where he is. You'll see him. So obviously it has positives, it has drawbacks, but the positives certainly for him here, his size, it's getting up in the air to put the ball out. If he's going up in contested catches, against double coverage, or just simply to get throws that have been, thrown a bit too high, this guy is up there with the best at doing this, just because he uses his size and his strength to do so. But it's not just in that situation, just in general, his catchability, it's exceptional the way he can catch the ball. He doesn't drop them very often, and he's probably one of the best catchers out of the one we've mentioned here. He's another guy. His size makes him a good blocker, good blocking candidate. He's willing, he's able. On tape, you'll see that he's got the blocking ability. Yes, it needs to improve a little, but again, college prospect, he'll get better, and hopefully another year with USC. But it is a tough schedule, as we alluded to, with Slovis on there, so it's going to be interesting to see how he gets on. Just like the guy before, if he has a good year against some of these better teams, he could really seriously increase his stock. So, other bits, his athletic ability is really good. Again, for a guy 6'5", you expect him to be a bit slower, but he's got great change of direction ability for someone so tall. He's got excellent lateral agility. He makes cuts with ease, and he can leave defenders for dead, which is, not the thing you see often with guys of that size. But, I think, and then the last thing for me, it's his understanding of the game, his ability to find gaps in coverage, create space. It's like a few of the guys before. It's amazing. He knows where the gaps are. He knows where the space is, and if he's got a competent quarterback throwing at him, he's going to get you a lot of yards. Now, as with all the guys, there are issues, and you have to go back to his size here. So obviously, it's his high pad level doesn't really affect him now, but going into the major leagues, going into the NFL, that's going to cause him issues there. And then the way USC plays, not have much exposure to press coverage. That's another thing he's going to need when he goes into the big leagues. If he's not been exposed to that before, it's going to be a massive jump in quality and the level of play, the style of play that USC do there. So for me, this is the big guy out of the lot of them. There is a lot to like here. I don't know how high he's going to go up in the draft. As I say, USC have a tough schedule this year, but I do like what I see with him. And I think, if he has a good season, he could be a possible surprise breakout candidate. You saw a little bit of him with the Amon-Ra tape last year. Did well together. So who knows? We might find our next fourth round guy if we do choose to double dip next year. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, it's hard to judge. Let's just say at the time of recording this episode, he's only 19 years old and he's going into his third year in college. Like, he'll be 20 in 10 days. So this kid is, like I say, he's a kid, but he's managed to get nearly 3 years of football under his belt. His IQ for someone so young is fantastic. He takes stuff on board really well. Like you say, for such a young lad, he's got an impressive frame, but it lacks meat, like you say, but he's got so much time, like you say, he's going to grow into that frame over the next few years, which is going to give him the potential to become potentially an outside threat. It could be a monster on the outside with that catch radius if he learns how to use his frame properly. As we've alluded to, USC keep things very simple, and that's not always the best thing. Like I say, they do run quite a simplistic offense, a lot of spread. So when it comes to the next level, he's going to have to take a lot on board. If I were this lad, like you say, I would definitely be returning for another year. I would not be declaring this year. I don't think he will enter the draft even if he's eligible, because I think he's going to need another year unless he puts up fairly good numbers. But I think the ceiling for this lad is probably one of the highest on the list because he's got those intangibles, he's got the frame. Like you say, he's also got the youngness. Like I say, he's going to take a lot on board. I bet from sounds of it, it's quite easy to teach and speak to. Like, he's a very willing kid to embrace stuff. So everything to like about him. Like, he doesn't have many flaws. Like you say, strength, he'll get learning a block on the outside, which is going to be heavily relied upon. But for a mid to late round pick, is someone you might be willing to take a flyer on with a potential upside.
So for me, what I see from Drake London is I would love to project him as a tight end, as someone who has the sort of Darren Waller style, started off as a low round wide receiver, ends up as a fantastic receiving tight end. He's got the right frame. He's absolutely huge. It's really hard to bring him down, much like I was saying with Treylon Burks. He's adept at the jump ball. He does most of his work over the middle of the field. His feet are incredible. He'll find the soft zone, and when he's catching it, he's already on the move and out of there. He doesn't kind of make sure that he's secured the ball and then he's gone, allowing himself to be tackled. He's secured already and he's on his way. It's really impressive. And I do wonder about him staying, because this will be Slovis's last year, I would have thought. Slovis will deliver him plenty of balls, because actually London's going to be one of the more reliable pieces I think that USC are going to have next year. That might actually inflate London's numbers. I think Slovis is going to recognise that London's going to be a really good output for him. So once Slovis is gone, you're going to have a rookie there in London's final year before declaring. Is that going to be the wisest thing to do, or is this stock going to be the highest when he's actually been with Slovis for his last year? I think he might declare at the end of next year, and I'm really tempted by this guy. Like Ryan said, I think he has the highest ceiling of all of these guys. I fell in love with him the first moment I saw him. Just there's something about him just to make me smile. He's very fun to watch.
Yeah, could be a possibility we might go USC twice, but I don't know. We'll see. I'll finish it off with the last guy. Now, obviously, you can't really talk about wide receivers without talking about Alabama. They are a factory for great wide receivers. They had a couple go this year, really high in the draft, and the next guy is on the conveyor belt already. He had a good year last year, and he's primed to break out this year, and that is John Mechie III. Now, he's had 2 years at Alabama. First year, it was his freshman year, didn't really play. So I'll just go through his 2020 stats. So he played 13 games, 55 receptions, 916 yards, nearly 17-yard average, and 6 touchdowns. And you have to understand that he's playing, with the strength of the core he was playing with last year. Targets were at a premium. Now, he's going to have an issue this year that he's also playing with a first-year quarterback that would presumably be Bryce Young. I could be wrong, but I think it's going to be Bryce Young who's starting for Alabama this year. But, I mean, in terms of Mechie himself, there's a lot to love here. Now, he is the speed demon out of this lot. We said a lot of guys don't have elite speeds. Mechie is your speed demon, so he can get downfield in a hurry. Once he's gone in the open, you aren't going to catch him. He just uses the ability to create and maintain separation anywhere on the field, and there's very few guys who are going to be able to keep up with him there. I mean, it's change. If they do, he's got change of direction. His footwork is amazing. He do fake outs, anything he needs just to get the separation he does, and then once he's got it on you, he's gone. But I mean, it's not just his downfield threat. Like I said, he's a threat on all 3 levels. He'll do slant routes through the middle. He'll do routes on the outside going deep. You name it, he can do it. And, because of that, he also is a very versatile guy, and they will line him up in multiple alignments across the field. Alabama have used him everywhere. They've used him in the backfield. They've used him in the slot. They've used him out wide. When he's in the backfield, they play him on fake jet sweeps, motion plays, all that sort of stuff. He just gives you, he's like a Swiss Army knife, but an elite Swiss Army knife. And if he is able to shine in the absence of, his predecessors from last year who took a lot of the blaze there, this is a guy who we could potentially be talking about really quickly. Now, he's not the most physical guy in the world. He's not like Treylon Burks. He's not built like an absolute tank, but he can hold his own as a wide receiver, as a blocker. So, that's another box he ticks there. He's willing and able. He might not always win, but he'll get stuck in there and he'll try. And, it's just his ability to catch over the shoulder, the catches, all that, they're just really high level. This is another guy who is going to be a delight to watch this year, even though it is Alabama and they have all the best players. He is a potential game changer. And if he has a really good year, this is a guy who could be potentially going really high in the draft. Now, as I mentioned, again, sort of his stature, he does have issues with downfield blocking a little bit. How bad they are remain to be seen. If he doesn't do well with it this year, this could affect his draft stock, and his contested catch rate as well. Also, maybe a little iffy, not the worst, but if it's one of those years where he struggles a little bit with it, again, could affect him. But I don't think it's going to. I mean, he's just an absolute delight to watch for me, and hopefully he's going to have a great year, and we'll see where he goes. But I don't know, you guys. Have Alabama got a next big thing here with him? I genuinely think he's going to have a really good year here.
I'm not sold on him as a wide receiver 1 just yet. Like, he has all the skills to be an absolute dynamite. Like you say, I think what I want to see is, like I say, I think they'll use him in the return game as well. He offers the dynamics to be a potential star kickoff punt returner, as well as downfield threat and burner. Like, he is so versatile. Like you say, you can use him in the run game. The thing is with him, like, even when he's not getting the ball, defenses fear him. They have to account for him when he runs on the motions. There's a guy that's got to track him across the field. He's someone that's able to dictate play whether he knows he's getting the ball or not, which I think is quite important. Like, he's got that self-confidence. He knows that he's feared. I do question, like you say, his ability to help on the outside, strength, his arm strength. Like you say, I'm pretty sure he's got small to average hand size as well. So he's going to have to work on his maneuverability when he's sustaining blocks on the outside to support in the run game. But I think there's all the skills there to be one of these smaller, more explosive kind of guys that's going to be a real threat at the next level to potentially take the defense off of the roof. like say another good year, and he could be like a kind of maybe like say middle of the second kind of guy. That's like maybe his possible territory. I'm not sure what his ceiling exactly is if he could sneak into the first, but he's someone that teams could potentially fear because he's got all them. When the ball gets in his hands, you just have to watch what he does, and he's gonna make some explosive plays. So he's going to be fantastic to watch this year, and he's going to be a real asset to Bryce Young, who's finally getting the keys to this Lamborghini. So let's see how he can drive it.
I think for me, the thing about John Mechie is that he is going to be unquestionably the wide receiver one for Alabama this year. He hasn't got much competition there. They've managed to get apparently Ja'Cory Brooks, who's a 5-star recruit, but some of their returning guys don't have his sort of caliber. So I think he's unquestionably going to be the wide receiver one. We're going to learn a lot about him this year compared to the last few. I worry that because he was down the depth chart last year, and I mean, he got 55 receptions last year, but he was still down the depth chart, that some of the other guys who have gone in this draft, they had a Heisman Trophy winner and then a guy that we all rated more highly than that, above him. And so that's going to distract a lot of attention away from him. What's going to happen if perhaps he gets double covered this year? Defenses actually go, you know what, Alabama, you can have your wide receiver 3 1-on-1. We're going to double John Mechie, and what are you going to do about it? I don't know. Very speedy guy, very great, catch ability, lovely route runner, just very smooth. I like his polish, but is it polish or is it skill? I'm not sure yet. I like where Ryan's put him so far. I think that he's got a very high ceiling, but I think he's got a lot to prove.
I agree in that sense. Like I say, teams this year are going to scheme to stop Mechie. Like they're going to say Bryce Young can have anyone else on the field because we're not scared of them, but we're going to put a safety over the top to stop him burning down the field. If you want to throw to him, that's fine. There's going to be double coverage, but can he escape that? Is he able to beat people off the line when they come and press him? Because he's going to see himself getting a lot more pressure at line of scrimmage. He's going to have to be a lot more physical this year. He's going to have to earn those 55 receptions if he wants them.
No, fair comments. I think fair comments, but I think we'll be hearing a lot more of him by the end of this year, but we will see. I'll pass it off to you lot now. Are there any wild cards you've got in here? Because I know there are a few I've not mentioned, and a big one from Clemson in particular. Clemson in particular, but I took his injury history into consideration. But if there are any wild cards, go for it.
I've got one, yeah. Like I say, we'll give a mention to, he's coming off the thoracic spinal surgery. So Justin Ross, we've no idea what's going to happen with this year. It could have been career ending. We're going to see if he even suits up. If not, it could be the end of his career. But my wild card actually is a small school receiver called Jalen Talbot. He's from the South Alabama Jaguars. He is 6'3", but he's got a slight 190-pound frame. You could count last year how many receivers went over 1,000 yards in a short season. It was only on 2 hands, and he was one of them. He finished the season with 1,100 yards. He had 8 touchdowns to go with that. So he's got a decent long frame, but he's also got elusiveness. Like he's able to get behind. He's got some good speed, decent hands. He's a really good project, like you say. And he's also, for anyone that knows college football, he's getting Jake Bentley this year, who's probably been in college about 10 years. But he's one of the best transfers. He's coming from South Carolina, Utah. That experience could really help him this year. Like you say, he's coming off a good year, but I think with someone stable at the position, this is a guy that could actually elevate his stock a little bit as one of those smaller name kind of guys. The only thing he needs to do this year, I'd say, is work on blocking and bulking up. I'd like to see him hit the gym, eat a few more burgers, because he's got a slight slender frame, but he's got some good draft stock, like say for next year. Could be one of those meal round kind of guys. I think he's going to be a guy to watch this year as well now with a brand new, very experienced quarterback. So he's someone that I think people should probably keep an eye out for when looking at the rankings.
So I don't have anyone in particular, but Carl Ryming on YouTube has just said Mechie feels like a Lions fantasy, separation hands, etc. Can't disagree with that. And Steve on Twitch has just said when is someone going to mention the wide receiver with the best name in the draft class, Ty Freifogel? I have no idea. Not a clue.
Philly and Ty Freifogel, they're good. They were good Indiana wide receivers. Like Michael Penix Jr. is going to rely on them heavily because Indiana, if they want to have anywhere near half the season they did last year, which they won't do because it just won't happen. But Ty Freifogel is going to very much be a focal point for that offense. He's a very solid wide receiver.
He was on the edge when I was looking at the guys to do for this. He was sort of on the edge there of one of the guys who could break through. But I like Ryan says, it depends on what he does at Indiana. And as for Penix, like, he's getting a lot of love this year, and I don't know why. For me, he's not the greatest guy there, but I've seen a lot of people really highly rate him.
One season wonder.
Yeah, I'm not on that train at all.
All right.
Right.
All done?
That's it for the receivers, I think, yeah.
All right. So our next episode will be this time next week, maybe Tuesday. I'm not sure yet, but we'll decide that later. Going to do our second part of this series of the 2022 draft classes. So the final part, we're going to be looking at linebackers and safeties. So there's an obvious spot at safety at the moment. We're saying perhaps that isn't going to be filled, and we're going to look to fill it next year. And linebackers, maybe Jamie Collins doesn't translate. Maybe Derek Barnes doesn't, have the production that we hope for. Maybe Alex Anzalone isn't the free agent acquisition we all hoped he would be, and we need to replace at least one of those guys as a starter for 2022. So let's have a look at those guys. So join us for that. We also, hopefully tomorrow, are going to have an interview with someone very special that will drop about the same time as we did our previous interviews, so keep an eye out for that. And on Saturday, coming up, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have our rookie tape review with our second and third round picks, who are, God, why have I gone blank? Levi Onwuzurike and...
You're doing Levi, I'm doing Alim.
Yeah, Alim McNeill. So please check that out. I'll be putting up posts on Twitter to alert you of those coming. Just to let you know what our socials are, if you're watching on YouTube, or even if you're listening on the audio, please go on YouTube, hit that like button, hit the subscribe and the bell to let you know when we're coming on live. We really appreciate that. We've got a load of momentum going. We want to see it rise. On the YouTube, that is Roar the Lions UK. You can find us there. And that's also our Facebook page, Facebook groups, Detroit Lions Fans UK 1 Pride Worldwide. On Twitch, we are ROTL_UK. And it's the same on Twitter. On Instagram, ROTL.UK. On the web, lots of profiles on our draftees, RoarTheLionsUK.com. We're also, as the start of the season's coming around, going to have a few more articles coming up soon. Don't forget to subscribe and rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. If you've got a question for us, leave it there, or you can email it to us. You'll find our email address on our YouTube page. But for now, it remains me to thank my co-hosts, Ryan McCluskey, Anthony Fitzpatrick. My name's Matthew Turner. We'll see you later on this week. Let's go Lions. One Pride.
One Pride.